we finally have a look at the Mercedes W15 Challenger for the 2024 season, and it is the real car and the real renders, what's literally going to be raced with in just a couple of hours at the shakedown. We get to look and go over the complete car, and wow, what a change it is, and quite a resemblance to a very old Challenger that had some Mercedes resemblance, funny enough. It doesn't follow any other concept that I've really seen. It does have the basics, but there is plenty to go over. This team has done a complete overhaul to their new car for this completely different concept. The channel's been going insane. Thank you so much for the support on the channel. It really means the world to me. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe and like, and let's get into the W15 Challenger for 2024. So as all my videos go, we get to start off with the front wing for Lewis Hamilton's last car. Now, I automatically wanted to throw this out here. When you look from the front for the first time at this car, tell me this car does not look pretty similar to the 07 McLaren. I mean, off of just looking at the car, what do you think? I'm not talking livery-wise, I'm talking about the shape of the car, what they've done with the front wing to that side pod inlet. It gives me a lot of 07 vibes and around that era. It is definitely a very interesting car to look at, but let's go over it and analyze it. So, I mean, from front to back, this car is completely different and really holds no resemblance to that of the W14. Now, the front wing itself also follows a concept that I think is different to others. It doesn't have the natural flaps the way that it is designed. It has a type of almost inwash on the beginning part of it, and then has a little cutout, almost Alpine-esque to its 2023 season. We do see this nose concept to where it's not hitting the very bottom flap, that first flap, which is disconnected from the rest of them, but they have a little scoop. No other team has had this scoop yet, and we only have a visual of two stakes, one on the left side, one on the very right side, holding up this front wing. Now, they don't have any dividers like the Ferrari car, but this front wing is pretty similar to that of the Alfa Romeo in 2023. I think that's where I see some of a resemblance, but overall a very different looking car when it comes to this front wing design. And they have changed up a little bit of the outwash. I feel like every team is messing around with that little outwash part from the front wing to that end plate, how it looks like. And it seems like the actual wing end plates on the side have curved in just the slightest bit. This is something new. And the actual front suspension, as we suspected, it is not changed from that push rod suspension. We thought they were going to go with pull rod, maybe. They have added more anti-dive to this setup. Clearly, you can see with the upper wishbone how much more it's been pushed up. And yeah, it's a different car. It's a darker car, so it's really hard to tell what they've done here. But still looking at this image, you can see that they don't have huge louvers on those side pods. Pretty Red Bull-esque there. But the actual inlet itself is different to everybody else. I guess you can say it's most similar to Alpine, but I'll tell you why it's actually a lot different to the Alpine car when we look at it from a side angle, because these side pods are very deceptive from this view. So looking at the car from a side angle, I mean, this just more shows off how, I guess the dark the car is, and it is hard to tell at certain areas, but the biggest thing you can tell, side impact structure. It's actually now into the floor. It's not that weird integrated thing that they had in front of their side pod that gave them the overcut that now the Red Bull is rumored to have, which is very interesting to look into. But the actual car itself, and you can see that they've added on that side pod inlet that it does have that little bottom lip kind of extending out, going in, kind of divoting into that side pod. And yet again, a much different look. Now, it's very similar to that of the Alpine. That was my first thought process, was wow, this looks very Alpine-like, but it's still even different in that aspect because the Alpine doesn't have a side pod inlet that's actually kind of going out on its bottom lip, which every other team has been following. Aston Martin has it to a huge extreme. We don't know with Red Bull just yet, but every other team, even the Alfa Romeo and even Haas, has been following this bottom lip going out after the RB19 introduced it. So Mercedes has introduced this. You can also see that on the front wing, you can't really see that element that usually is on the side of the end plate, but I think it's just darkened out. We can't see what they've changed there. The actual floor itself is pretty simplified. I don't think this is the complete floor for the car, but they do say this is the launch spec, so it seems pretty simple when you look at it. Now, the side pod, pretty normal. I would almost compare this to actually what the Ferrari has. The Ferrari is pretty similar in this, but when you change a concept like Ferrari and like Mercedes have done, yes, you might gain a lot of time, but now going on that development package and learning the car is probably something that every team is going to follow if they've changed the concept, because they might have a very in-season development aggressiveness to their upgrades, but the actual start of the season, they have to understand and figure out, is this car going to be challenging for wins? Have we done something wrong? So most of these cars at launch spec are going to be pretty simple. The Aston Martin, the Alpine, those are exceptions, but Mercedes and Ferrari, they definitely aren't any exceptions because they've changed a whole lot with their car. As we go to more of the rear part of the car, the actual engine cover itself has changed and the cooling outlets are now on that engine cover hump. This is something that I suspected. Their engine cover was completely different to before. They've changed a little bit of how that halo looks, and same with the way that the air is getting into the side pod on that mirror and those little dividers that they put on the front of the side pod to distribute the way the air is going down into the bottom of the car. Now, they also, just like the Ferrari, have a huge rear wing end plate. Like the way that it's cut out, oh my God, they've gone to an extreme as well as the Ferrari. The engine cover, as I said a little bit ago, is different, but also significantly different in how much curvature is in it. Before, those were huge louvers that they had on that engine cover. They've definitely toned it down, and the shark fin in the car is way more slight than it was before, promoting some type of cooling in the back. Now, looking at it from this view, it looks like their beam wing is still pretty similar, but we're not going to see much change up until track to track change, because that's really where the beam wing changes. And that's a significant change when the car has changed a lot. But you can see how much bigger of an undercut is in this car. And yes, we did suspect this, but this is pretty much to that of the level of the Ferrari car, of the Aston Martin car. It's a way bigger undercut. This car was lacking that completely. Even in those overcut side pods last year, it didn't have that undercut. It's very much outward extended in that front of the side pod to carry a lot of air. Now, this is something that Red Bull did with its RB19 in Hungary. It seems like Mercedes is following that as well. So is Aston Martin, so is Alpine. A lot of teams are following this, but they don't have any slide pods to go along with it. The actual floor itself has changed some of its philosophy, obviously because of the side impact structure. They don't have a more circular hump, but now they have kind of this divider that puts some of the outwash in a certain way, and that inwash from the way that the floor is made is obviously different now with its side impact structure. We do see also from this view, the front suspension is a good thing to look at, and you can see that the front suspension doesn't have that little almost ramp going down into the floor like they had with the W14, and I even think the W13 introduced it at some point. So yes, these are still renders to a degree. They say it's a launch spec, but will it come out like that? They could possibly add that to their suspension to give it more air getting distributed to the inwash part of the floor to even more promote that undercut. And you can see that they've also lifted that floor a lot with its floor concept. I think this is something that they tested in COTA anyways to see how it's going to work on the car, and it seems that's what they're going along with. That floor concept did help them at the end of the day in gaining performance. Big focus of this car is fixing the unpredictable axle that this car had. James Allison talked about it. The unpredictability with the W14 going into this W15 is something that's been significantly changed. They've gone with a different car concept. It has nothing to do with the W14, and it's more relaxed, as in it's a more normal thing for us to look at. The side pod inlet is definitely something to look at. Their undercut is much bigger to that of before, but that was something that we suspected as well. Everything that was kind of talked about for this car seems to be pretty true. They've changed up the rear end a bit. We do know that their rear suspension is changed to a now push rod rear suspension, just like the Aston Martin has it. We saw that off of the Aston Martin to give us an idea of what this Mercedes Challenger is going to look like. Will this be a complete change? Can they fight for that 8th championship for Lewis or 1st for George Russell? Only time can really tell. We're getting really close to testing. I absolutely can't wait. And this is a completely different shift that even I didn't think they were going to kind of go down this route, but we'll have to see. They said they have found a lot of performance. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.